Living together is just impossible. Didn't I say I've reached my limit? I desperately pleaded with my wife, Amy, but she looked at me with cold eyes and retorted, "If you have something to complain about, why don't you just leave?" Fine. I'm leaving this house. As I left, I held the completed divorce papers in my hand. I'll submit these right away. What fate awaited my wife and mother-in-law after I promptly submitted the divorce papers? My name is Jack. This year I turned 41. I've been married to my wife, Amy, for 7 years. We are a working couple, each with different jobs. I was raised by my maternal grandparents as my parents died in a car accident when I was young. My grandfather, who loved traveling, used to take me to various places to cheer me up after my parents' death. Thanks to this, traveling also became my hobby, and I started writing blog articles about my trips, earning income as a freelancer. That's how I met Amy during one of my travels. It all started when I met Amy while drinking with a group of guys I got to know at a bar. I soon realized that I couldn't help but keep an eye on her as she was the life of the party, even making sure to include me in the conversations. Amy, who worked at a brokerage firm, appeared dazzling to me, working tirelessly every day even under the pressure of sales. After we exchanged contact information, I pursued her relentlessly, leading to a relationship and eventually marriage. Even after marriage, I continued working from home, writing blog articles, while Amy worked as a company employee. One day, Amy approached me while I was leisurely drinking coffee. "Jack, I'm heading to work. Can you do the laundry and also prepare dinner at night, please?" "Sure." "Oh, in that case, could you pick up some canned tomatoes? I'll make meat pasta." When I asked this, Amy made a face, clearly annoyed. "I work outside the house, you know. You're home, Jack. You could at least do that." "Sorry, I might not have time to go out today. My work's really piling up." Just then, the living room door opened. "Hey, Jack, I've been listening. And what do you mean asking Amy to run errands for you?" It was Mary, my mother-in-law, who lived nearby. "Yo, Mary, what brings you here all of a sudden?" I asked with a trembling voice, taken aback as my mother-in-law glared at me. Then Emmy casually dropped a bombshell. "Huh, right? I gave Mom a key to our apartment." "What? Why would you do that without asking me?" As I started to question Amy, my mother-in-law glared at me and said, "Is there a problem? Besides, Jack, it's ridiculous for you to push household chores onto your wife who's working. You're at home. You should be handling everything." "Yeah, right, Mom. Jack's terrible, isn't he?" Amy joined in, smirking alongside her mother. Really, living so comfortably at home, barely earning anything and still having the nerve to be criticized like this. All I could do was bite my lip. "All right, I'll go." "That's right. Since your wife is the one earning here, you just need to stay quiet and do as you're told," avoiding my satisfied mother-in-law's gaze. I retreated to my room. My mother-in-law is my biggest headache. After her husband passed away, she's been living alone nearby, and she's extremely proud of Amy, who graduated from a top university and is still doted on by her. Ever since the beginning of our marriage, she's never liked that. I work from home, often making snide remarks. Amy never takes my side when my mother-in-law attacks me like this. I realized after marrying Amy that perhaps because she was raised with constant praise from her mother, she has a lot of pride and is somewhat vain. Additionally, there's a sense of dependency between them, and if I ever complain about my mother-in-law, Amy quickly becomes upset. I'm sure my mother-in-law will start coming over more frequently now. Just thinking about it fills me with dread. True to form, my mother-in-law started dropping by our house more often. She criticized every bit of housework I did, and on days Amy was off work, she'd stay the whole day chatting and laughing with her. This lifestyle continued, and I became completely exhausted. That day was my mother-in-law's birthday, and I was on my way to her house. My steps were heavy, but I had to fulfill my duty. Amy had work and was leaving the house, so we planned to meet at her mother's place, leaving me to go by myself. First, happy birthday, Mary. Arriving early, I took a beautifully wrapped box out of a paper bag. This is a gift I'd bought from a shop I visited for one of my articles. It's a handmade bag. Before I could finish, my mother-in-law let out a loud sigh. What is this? Trying to go cheap? It's probably just some freebie you got as a souvenir, isn't it? That's not true. I quickly denied her comments, but she wasn't listening. I don't need such a cheap bag. Really, you have no sense of thoughtfulness at all. I thought you'd be happy with it, I said. My mother-in-law glared at me and began to make sarcastic comments. Be quiet. I don't like that you use work as an excuse to travel around causing trouble for Amy. That's not true. I take pride in my work, and it's cruel to speak like that. I snapped back, but she continued to look down on me. Proud about earning pocket money? That's laughable. You're living off Amy. Return this useless thing and bring me a gift card instead. Stunned, I put the gift back in the bag and left my mother-in-law's house, heading towards the department store. I'd like $200 worth of gift cards, please. After buying the gift cards and having them wrapped at the department store, I returned to my mother-in-law's house, my steps heavy again. Mary, I'm back, I spoke. Amy, who had arrived at some point, popped her head out. Jack, it's my mom's celebration today. I've ordered some fancy takeout. The dining table was crammed with dishes from a famous restaurant, but I was told to cook, so I bought ingredients already. As I stood there dumbfounded, my mother-in-law interjected. What are you talking about? This food is obviously better than anything you'd make. Thank you, Amy, for thinking of me. All I could do was watch them with a look of satisfaction. Reluctantly, I took a seat, and the three of us began to eat. Amy and my mother-in-law were chatting happily, but I felt left out. As the meal was nearing its end, Amy suddenly spoke up. Hey, Jack, shouldn't we consider moving soon? Moving? What do you mean? You know, the new high-rise apartment that just went up nearby. I think living in a place with a great view would really lift my spirits and motivate me to work harder. Oh, a high-rise apartment? That sounds wonderful. My mother-in-law chimed in dreamily. So I hurriedly said, but isn't our current apartment good enough? However, Amy's face became visibly upset at my words. We can afford it, so why not? My mother-in-law glared at me, pressuring me with her words. That's right. A husband should just quietly listen to his wife. I shrunk down and could only say, understood. Indeed, if moving could make my work more efficient, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Plus, if I make sure not to give my mother-in-law a key this time, it might be better than the current situation. Convincing myself with these thoughts, I agreed to move to the high-rise apartment. As we proceeded with the moving arrangements, I made a point to Amy. Amy, there's something I need you to promise once we move. Can you promise not to give your mom the keys? Huh. Why? It's no big deal. I'm at my limit with your mom's meddling. If you can't promise that, I can't go through with the move. Then Amy's expression turned thoughtful, and she placed her hand on my shoulder. All right. If you feel that strongly about it, I guess it can't be helped. I won't give her the keys. Thank you. I appreciate you understanding. Amy seemed really excited about living in the high-rise apartment with her promise not to give her mother the keys. I felt relieved and continued preparing for the move. A few months later, we finally moved into the high-rise apartment of our dreams. The location was exceptional, with great views, and the interior was luxurious and elegant. Amy and I were finally living a fulfilling life in our new home, but the issue with her mother still loomed. Hey, can I invite my mom over today? What? You just invited her over yesterday. Amy started wanting to invite her mother over almost every day, and as a result, my stress kept building up, and we increasingly got into arguments. Please stop inviting your mom over every day. Why not? You're the one who said not to give her the keys, so I'm asking for permission now. That's not the point. The day after our heated argument, I had to leave for an overnight business trip for an article meeting. On the day of my departure, Amy didn't say much as I left the house. I boarded the bullet train and headed to my business destination, tackling one task after another. It was busy, but I managed to finish my work and bought some souvenirs before heading home. The moment I returned and opened the door, I noticed something unusual. There was a vase-like ornament which hadn't been there before. It was the same one I had seen at my in-laws' house. A bad feeling crept over me, and when I went to the living room, I found it filled with stacks of cardboard boxes. What? What is this? Then, from behind the cardboard boxes, my smirking mother-in-law emerged. Finally back, huh? I heard you told Amy not to give me the keys, trying to lock me out. That's not going to happen. Panicked, I confronted her. Mary, what is all this luggage about? What do you mean? I'm moving in here. If we live together, it doesn't matter whether I have a key or not, right? But what about the house you were living in? Oh, that place was a rental. I've already canceled the lease. Dizzy from my mother-in-law's sudden declaration, my eyes were drawn to a piece of paper on the table. Ignoring my stunned reaction, Amy then appeared in the living room and looked puzzled upon seeing me. Jack, you're back? Amy, what is all this? I didn't hear anything about this. Then Amy, looking annoyed, scratched her head and said, It's fine, isn't it? We have extra rooms. Living together is impossible. I've reached my limit. I pleaded desperately with Amy, but she looked at me coldly and said, If you have a problem, then you can leave. Saying that, Amy handed me the completed divorce papers that were on the table. Are you serious? Dead serious. If you go against me, it's divorce. Now hurry up and fill it out. Saying this, Amy forced the divorce papers into my hand. That's right. Amy and I, will live here. So the unwanted should take a hint, please. Amy and her mother spoke with expressions as if this were the most natural thing. After enduring their constant sarcasm for so long, I couldn't believe they would resort to such deceitful tactics, and now to be told to leave. I don't need a family like this anymore. Though I clenched my teeth in frustration, I told them in an extremely calm voice, All right, I'll leave this house. Good. Now hurry up and pack your things and get out. I can't wait to see how you manage to live on your own. As I listened to my mother-in-law's mocking laughter, I gathered my belongings. Amy was avoiding looking at me, but I clearly said to her, Amy, are you really sure about this? Then she looked at me, her mouth twisted in a smirk, and retorted, You'll probably come crawling back soon anyway. Why don't you cool off a bit? As I left the high-rise apartment, my mother-in-law watched me with this smug grin. I was holding the divorce papers in my hand. All right, I'll file these right away. I was determined to end my ties with my wife and mother-in-law. A month later, while relaxing in the apartment I had newly rented, the intercom rang insistently. Who is it? Hey, you. Open up right now. On the intercom screen, I saw my mother-in-law with a red face and Amy standing behind her. Initially, I thought about ignoring them, but not wanting to cause a scene in the neighborhood, I decided to let them in. What brings you here? I asked with a troubled look, and my mother-in-law snapped at me. What do you mean by telling us to leave that high-rise apartment? What do you mean? The apartment has already been sold. When I bluntly stated that, my mother-in-law's eyes widened in shock. Sold? But that apartment is Amy's property, isn't it? You can't just sell it. Amy's property? What are you talking about? I bought that high-rise apartment. What? My mother-in-law looked from me, calm and collected, to Amy, who was standing there with a pale face, unable to move. What's this all about? What do you mean? I let out a deep sigh and looked straight at Amy. Amy, didn't you tell her? Amy remained silent, avoiding eye contact. I turned to my still confused mother-in-law. You called me a bottom-feeding bum, but I'm actually the founder of a certain travel blog, and I occasionally appear in magazines and on TV. My mother-in-law's mouth hung open in shock. I continued calmly. So I do have some savings, by the way. The gift you said was too cheap and didn't want was actually worth over $1,000. Oh, over $1,000? Well, as you said, I returned it. And about the takeout for your birthday, Amy charged it to my card without asking. My mother-in-law's face was a picture of shock, her mouth opening and closing. Then she suddenly turned to Amy with great intensity. Amy, then why don't we just buy back the high-rise apartment from him? You're the top salesperson, earning over $100,000 a year, right? You must have some savings. Amy didn't say a word. I couldn't help but smile as I said to my mother-in-law, "And he has no savings left, right, Amy?" What? Again? To the surprise of my mother-in-law and the stunned Amy, I spoke calmly. She's been continuously failing in the stock market and has incurred huge losses. By now, her savings must be almost gone. Isn't that right, Amy? No way, Amy, he's lying, right? As my mother-in-law grabbed and shook Amy's arm, Amy seemed to lose all strength in her knees and collapsed to the floor. I thought moving to the high-rise apartment would boost my motivation and lead to success in my job. But as I pressed Amy with a glare, she continued hesitantly, I failed again. Not only am I unable to buy back the high-rise apartment, I'm also struggling to get enough money for living. Mom, what? While my mother-in-law panicked, I crossed my arms and said, I knew it. Amy doesn't have the knack for trading stocks. I felt as a husband I had to support her, but then Amy crawled towards me and suddenly prostrated herself on the ground. Jack, I'm really sorry. Please, let's start over. Amy, what are you saying to this man? My mother-in-law tried to get Amy to stand up, but Amy turned to her and cried out, Mom, if I don't do this, we can't survive. As Amy repeatedly bowed her head to me, I said in a soft tone, Amy, bring your head up. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with hope. I continued in a gentle voice, Annie, you never helped with the housework because I was working from home. That is, I really am sorry. Amy apologized with a pale face. Ignoring her apology, I went on, You look down on me because I work from home, and that's why you could tell me to leave, right? And now when I actually do leave, this happens. Aren't things a little one-sided here? That is, besides, we are already divorced. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Let's each go our separate ways, Jack. As I spoke firmly, Amy tried to cling to me again, but I silently shook off her hand. My mother-in-law, who had been watching the whole scene, let out a pained cry. Wait, if you're divorced, what about the high-rise apartment, the luxurious lifestyle? That's obviously not happening now, is it? As I spoke in an exasperated tone, my mother-in-law screamed hysterically. But, well, what are we going to do now? I don't know. Why don't you try to live happily with your beloved daughter? As I said this, my mother-in-law's mouth flapped open and shut. I brought the dejected Amy to her feet and pushed her outside. For a while I could hear my mother-in-law's noisy protests at the door, but it quieted down when the building manager arrived. 6 months later, I was overseas, embarking on a new journey. The unique sense of freedom abroad felt incredibly good. Recently, I received a particular message. It was from Amy, whom I had parted ways with that day after being evicted from the high-rise apartment. Amy and her mother ended up in a nearly collapsing old apartment to repay the debts incurred from her stock trading. Amy was working tirelessly day and night. Her mother, who had never worked before, took up a part-time job in a factory to help make ends meet. The message from Amy expressed her gratitude towards me for making her realize the hardships of earning money. She was working hard and had come to appreciate the value of it. I felt a small knot in my heart unraveling as I read her words. A few days ago, when I returned to the country after a long time, Amy invited me out for drinks. I think I was so stressed out back then that I lashed out at you for doing what you love as your job. I am really sorry. Amy spoke her words of apology anew. That day, I felt like I was hearing Amy's true feelings for the first time. It's okay. Thanks to that, I'm very happy now. When I said this, Amy smiled wistfully. Are you going to go abroad again? Yeah, I'll be heading overseas again next week. At the end of our meeting, Amy extended her hand to me. I'll live my life to the fullest, not to be outdone by you, Jack. Yeah, I'm rooting for you. We said this and exchanged a formal handshake. As I headed home, I thought about continuing to cherish my work and living my life positively.